Chapter 26. When we approached our tent, I saw Thad sitting on the ground waiting. As soon as he saw us, he scrambled to his feet. "I'm here," he called. As we drew near, Señor Rosales realized he had customers waiting at his café. "Un momento, I'll be back," he said, and went off to serve them. "Come out of the rain," I said to Thad, and went into the tent. I sat down on our box table. Thad sat on Jacob's bed. Facing him, holding my arms tightly about my chest, I poured out everything I knew. What Sam had said, how kind Señor Rosales was, but that the police offered nothing, at least not for a few days. But by then, I added, it might be too late. Once again, my tears were streaming. Thad listened, open-mouthed. When I'd finished talking, he said, "You really think Jacob got crimped?" "I do," I cried. "I don't know what else to believe. Jacob wouldn't just go away, I know that. Someone stole him. And if Sam is right, I have to find him fast." "Nice that kid Sam told you." "It was, except he asked me not to say anything about him, and I did." "Who to?" "Señor Rosales, the police chief, you." "Being upset makes me stupid. I hate being stupid," I fairly shouted. "I should never have left Jacob alone." I smeared the tears from my face. Thad shifted about with discomfort. Then he said, "All right, then what are we going to do about it?" I heard that "we" and was ever grateful. I said, "I have to go to the cove and search Rotten Row." "There are hundreds of ships." "Thad," I cried, "I have to find him." I think I was yelling at myself. Thad looked at me, got up, and said, "Okay, let's go." I was not going to argue. "Un momento," I said, and hurried out of the tent and to the café. Señor Rosales was working, cooking and serving meals to a line of men. "Lo siento," he called to me. "Thad said he'd go right now with me to the ships." "Excelente. I'll join you when I can." By the time Thad and I headed downhill, it was late afternoon. He, as usual, said little, and I was spent of words. If anything, his impatient long legs carried him faster. I was fine with hurrying, working hard to just breathe. The rain had stopped, but the wind was astir, making the air cold. Would San Francisco ever be warm? As we rushed along, I kept my eyes on the cove ships and had to admit what everyone was cautioning. There were so many, and a fair number were huge. It truly was overwhelming. But it was also maddening to think that by gazing upon the rotten fleet, I was, in all probability, looking at where Jacob was being hidden, yet I couldn't know which ship held him. How then to begin? How to pick the first ship to search? I was reminded of something I once read. If you look at everything, you see nothing. Then I told myself, I'm doing something, and struggled to soothe myself by thinking, it's better doing than dithering. I was desperate to begin, my nerves as tight as fiddle strings, though there was no music coming from me. When we reached the cove, Thad went right to the rowboat we had used to go down the bay. Happily, both oars were there, but I also saw that the tide was rising, which would hinder the rowing. We shoved the small boat into the water. The sound of it grating over the sand made me shiver. I scrambled onto the rowboat's center seat and snatched up the oars. "Where are we starting?" Thad asked, as he gave us another shove farther out, and climbed into the stern seat. I looked over my shoulder at the mass of desolate ships, and realized I wished that someone might just say, "Go to that brig, the one with the tattered flying jib hanging from its bowsprit." Or, "It's that three-masted frigate with a broken angel figurehead." Needless to say, no one said anything of the kind. Instead, I sat motionless, overwhelmed by what I was wanting, needing to do, while knowing that time was crucial and flowing fast like the tide. Thad came to my rescue. "Let's try that small one," he pointed. "See her, on the edge?" I saw the boat he meant, a small vessel, not nearly as big as the others in the fleet. She had but one mainmast, plus what they call a mizzen at the stern. Relieved to have a direction with which to begin the search, I began to row, though I was too fraught to labor well. Each time the oars hit the water they splashed noisily, making us jerk forward so that my braid kept whipping around, bothering my face. I had to struggle to keep my hands under control. In fact, they were trembling. My eyes hurt with suppressed tears. Thad, impatient, held out his hands, telling me he was willing to row. Annoyed, I snapped, "I can do it. Just tell me where to go." "What kind of boat is it?" I asked, trying to ease the tension. "It's what they call a ketch," he said as we moved along with greater ease. "Bet she came down from Oregon. The sails are only halfway lowered. Her crew, 2, 3. Yeah, they couldn't get off her fast enough." I looked around and saw the boat he meant. There was a sign tacked to her bow that read, "Off for riches, help yourself." We drew close. I used one oar to swing our boat about until the stern bumped up against the ketch's hull. Thad stood, reached up, found a grip hold, and pulled us closer. "Jacob!" I shouted. "Jacob, it's me, Torrey! Jacob!" There was no answer. Thad grabbed a loose line and pulled. It proved long enough to tie to our rowboat so as to keep her from floating off. "I'll board her," he said, and he reached for the bulwark rail and began to haul himself up. "Wait! I'm coming too." I shipped the oars. As soon as Thad was on the deck, he turned around and held out his hand. Unsteady in the bobbing rowboat, I grabbed it and he pulled. Although awkward, the next moment I was standing next to him on the deck. The ketch was small and open with most of her deck before the main mast. Many lines lay about, some looking like birds' nests, others coiled with care. A good number of tools, like a belaying pin and a mallet, were strewn about. An anchor line hung from her bow and kept her in place. I wonder why they'd bothered. She felt desolate and empty. The boat was odd to see. Though I knew that she had no crew and had been left behind, she had her full rig of sails. They hung limply from her 2 masts. The lower edge of the mizzen sail dipped into the water and was stained with green scum. There was a hatchway to some space below deck. "She's all here," said Thad. "Sign says we could take her and sail around the world. We should do it." "That's not why we're here," I said, frustrated by his bantering. I went to the hatchway and leaned over it. "Jacob!" I called. There was no answer. Dim though it was, I could see deep enough below to be sure no one was there. I pulled myself up. "Not here," I announced. Thad said, "Let's try another ship."